You're listening to another exciting episode of Submission Radio. It's July 27th. I'm Dennis Shkaratov. I'm here with Kasper Rosalowski, and we have some big guests on the show today.
We do. A lot of these guys are pretty much future UFC Hall of Famers. We didn't skimp on the A-League guest today on this episode. We've got none other than Diego Sanchez. Doesn't get much bigger than that in the lightweight division. Guy's been around for a long time. He's the original Ultimate Fighter winner, and today we're going to be chatting to him. Then after the Nightmare, we're going to be having Rich Ace Franklin, another future UFC Hall of Famer. Definitely a shoo-in to be in the Hall of Fame for UFC. He's got a lot of things happening at the moment. He's in ONE FC. We want to chat to him about what exactly is happening in Rich's life and how close is he to having that final fight in the UFC. And then, Dennis, we've got another big guest. He doesn't stop there. Who else do we have on the show?
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Submission Radio band, drum roll, please. Oh, they're not here today. Okay, fine. We have none other than the axe murderer himself. Wanderlei Silva is on the show. I feel like David Letterman right now. Wanderlei Silva is on the show, ladies and gentlemen. You know, we will be talking to Wanderlei about what's going on with his career, who he wants to fight next, how he's feeling right now. So very excited to have Wanderlei on the show. You know, me and Kasper met him in Sydney for UFC 110. He's such a nice guy. So we're looking forward to having a chat with Wanderlei and really sort of squeezing the juice out of the lemon and finding out exactly what's going on. So, Kasper, so you're telling us that we've got Diego Sanchez, we've got Rich Franklin, who's the vice president of ONE FC. So that means it's almost like having royalty on the show. And we've got Wanderlei Silva all in one show for one special price of $19.95, postage, delivery, and everything in between.
Yeah, pretty much. But wait, there's more. We're still going to be breaking down the UFC on Fox 12 card. So there's going to be a lot of excitement in this show. And of course, the show is free. Don't be silly. There's no postage and handling. The only thing we ask for is your love. And if you feel like it, subscribe to the channel. We got a lot of good stuff coming up in the future. And I believe when we speak to Rich Franklin, we do have to address him as Mr. President.
That's right. So, as Kasper said, no charge. We are like the ShamWow of MMA. We provide a great package. But yeah, just very excited to have these guys on the show. Speaking of Diego Sanchez, you know, he's coming down to Australia with Everything MMA between the 15th and the 17th of August. He's going to be visiting the great cities of Perth and Melbourne, and you guys will be able to get an opportunity to have dinner with Diego. Check out a seminar to learn about all of his secrets and get a photo and autograph. Apparently, Cass, if you get a platinum ticket, you get a free talk t-shirt. So imagine that, walking around in your free talk t-shirt. That's a very stylish look. So check him out at www.everythingmma.com.au. Me and Cass, we've been to a few of the seminars. We enjoy their work. And if you're in Australia, stop by, have a chat with Diego, just like we will later on in the show. There's a lot to talk to him about, as Kasper said.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, for more details, everythingmma.com.au. Check it out. Book those tickets. Tickets are selling out very fast to see Diego Sanchez in person. But I think, actually, we're going to be talking to Diego in a second. He's about to be on the phone now, isn't he, Dennis?
That's right. Before we pop Diego on, Cass, another new thing that's happening, the Submission Radio website, man. How excited are we about this thing?
Yeah, you know, we've been working on a lot, and by that I mean we've done absolutely nothing. Our media team have been, so big round of applause for the media team. Submissionradio.com. It's up there. It's sexy. It's looking good. Definitely check it out, guys. We're going to be having articles there. We're going to be having links to all the episodes, and it's a great way to stay in touch, and you guys can comment on all our stuff. So if you want to critique the hell out of us, you're more than welcome to. But we'll definitely see you there. Check us out on Twitter, Submission AUS. Check out the Facebook, Submission Radio AUS. And, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want more shows like this and more interviews.
That's right. It literally says get in touch. So, yeah, send us your questions for next episode. We're actually going to be doing a fan question section on the show. We've had a lot of you guys asking us, what do you guys think about this? What do you guys think about that? And, you know, when we're on these private chat rooms on these niche porn websites, we answer the questions. We decided to bring it on the show now because the answers could be quite interesting. Ask us anything you want. It could be MMA, could be life related. The Dr. Phils of MMA are ready to take your questions. Submissionradio.com. Send us your questions, and you know we're excited to answer them next week.
Yeah, absolutely. I never knew Russian strippers on webcams knew so much MMA and had so many questions for us, but apparently they do. But without further ado, guys, I think it's time for our next guest.
Our next guest is the winner of the first Ultimate Fighter. He's one of the UFC's most iconic names and has been known for displaying his heart in every fight. He will be coming to Australia with Everything MMA August 15th to 17th, and he will be visiting Melbourne and Perth. For more information, you can check out everythingmma.com.au. Ladies and gentlemen, on the show, we have none other than Diego Sanchez. Diego, welcome to Submission Radio.
Oh, it's a good day here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I'm excited to go see Australia. The last time I've been out there was in 2007, and been a while, but I'm excited to come back.
Well, I guess the biggest question to ask you to kick off the interview, Diego, is how's the packing going? You know, August is coming up soon. What does Diego Sanchez pack in his suitcase when he goes over to Australia?
Well, I'm just packing all the usual stuff, some sandals, some shoes, and, you know, I've been thinking about what gear I'm going to pack in case I need to get on the mat with some of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people out there, and that's about it. Just the normal stuff.
Smart choice, because here in Australia we wear flip-flops and you know, all the sandals pretty much all year round. Doesn't matter whether it's, you know, winter, snowing, or whatever. Now, obviously, everyone here is very excited for your seminars with Everything MMA. Tell us, what can fans expect from a seminar with Diego Sanchez?
They can expect just some high level Jacksons, mixed martial arts techniques. They can expect some good jiu-jitsu. They can expect some mental game too. You know, a lot of seminars you go to, you won't get the mental game, and I think that's one thing that I have a lot of experience in is the mental aspects of competition and the mental aspects of mixed martial arts, and it's something that I've been always wanting to spread to the young mixed martial artists, and hopefully I get some young kids at the seminars. I love working with the children and the youth, so we'll see who comes out.
Absolutely, Diego. Now, you've mentioned Jackson. It's been a little while since your last fight. How's training going? What have you been up to? We saw that video of you watching one of your teammates at one of the fights, supporting him. It was a great video. What have you been up to apart from that since your last fight?
You know what? My last two fights were that, like, I had 3 back-to-back training camps. So after this last fight, I've taken about a month off and just done some family stuff. I've been doing some house hunting, and I'm looking for a new house for me and my family, and you know, just more than anything, just a family life. And this last week, I got back into Jackson's and got some good sparring in, and fortunately, I wasn't so out of shape, and I'm ready to kick things off and start preparing for my next fight.
Fantastic. And, you know, let's talk a little bit about, you know, Jacksons and Winklejohns in Albuquerque. You know, there's so many fighters there. You know, it's really an all-star cast of fighters from all divisions. And with so many guys there, do you train with everybody equally, or are there specific guys that you train with more than the others?
Yeah, you know, now that I'm a lightweight, I train with mostly lightweights and under, so smaller, lighter, faster guys. But you know, sometimes when it comes to the jiu-jitsu and the ground game, I'll get in there. I'll get in there with the heavyweights and get some good sparring in with the heavyweights. But as far as taking blows from the big guys like John Jones and Andrei Arlovsky, I'll leave that to them guys, and I'll stay with the little guys.
That's a great point, Diego. You know, we had John Dodson on the show, and he tells us he likes to spar with Arlovsky sometimes. Maybe it's because he's so quick that Arlovsky can barely hit him. Now, you know, there was a big event over the weekend, UFC Dublin, and you know, your name has always been called out, obviously, because you're one of the biggest stars in the UFC. Norman Park just recently called you out after his fight, wanting to fight you next. Do you know who Norman Park is, and would you be interested in possibly fighting him?
Yeah, Norman. Yeah, you know, I don't understand why Norman called me out. I guess he wants to fight a bigger name and make a name for himself, and that's understandable. But yeah, you know, he's on a roll, and you know, right now I'm like, I'll fight anybody. I need a fight. I need a fight so I can get motivated, so I can just have that name in the back of my mind every day, waking up thinking about this guy's training for me, And so, yeah, if things come together with Norman Park, I would love to fight the guy. I need to fight, and I'm not too picky. Who I have to fight. Of course, the fight that I want, it's not going to happen, but it's not going to happen in my next fight anyway. But like I said, I'll fight anybody at the lightweight division, and so, I'm ready for anybody. And it's like the most stacked division in the UFC, in my opinion. And the top 25, top 30 are all great fights. So I'm sure someone will step up, and I'm hoping to get on the inaugural show, Mexico City, the first UFC in Mexico. I just would like to be a part of that. Me being Latin ethnicity, I would love to be a part of that. I think it's going to be a very special show, and I love fighting him. And he Cain Velasquez undercard. He's quite the champion, and it's always fun to be on one of his undercards.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because that literally was my next question about the Mexico card. Obviously it would be fantastic. Your last fight was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Crowd was crazy. We can only imagine how crazy they'd be in Mexico. But you mentioned the next fight that you're going to get isn't the one you're going to want. Which is the fight that you do want? Are you talking about Nate Diaz?
Yeah, I'm talking about Nate Diaz. I've called him out, he's waiting for a bigger payday, but I'm a fighter. We're fighters, and he's trying to make money, and I understand that. But it's like, you gotta be grateful for what you got, pay your dues, And like Dana White said, the guy, he fought for the title, he lost, and his next fight he got knocked out, and then now he's crying and complaining after he has one big win. And I'm like, hey man, there's a guy standing right here. If you're so much better than me, come kick my ass, and easy payday for you. And that's not the incident though. He doesn't want to step up to the plate and give the fans the fight that the fans deserve. And I just I know that all the fans would love to see a Diaz Sanchez too. And so it's just a great fight for the fans, and all in all, I fight for the fans, and I love to fight for the fans. I love being that part of my legacy where the fans. I'm a fan favorite, and it's because I put on great shows. And I know I need to get back to what got me there and start guys on the ground and beating up, but it's a fun sport, and I think that me and Nate Diaz would be a great fight, a great style matchup.
And I wanted to ask you, just in terms of fans, I think you've always been a fan favorite since The Ultimate Fighter, but in terms of style, it's changed a lot. It's changed a huge amount since The Ultimate Fighter 1. Your old style consisted of wrestling and crushing ground and pound, while recently is, you've been very much like an everlasting brawler. I was going to ask you, which style do you prefer and why the change?
It's just the change is just a part of my mixed martial arts evolution. I continue to try to get better and better in the stand up. So if I have to stand up, I can handle myself there and win the fight there if I have to win the fight there. But my strength is on the ground, and anybody that's rolled with me knows that on the ground I'm hard to beat, and especially at 155, I feel that I'm one of the top grapplers in the division, and all my coaches and all the people around me, all my close people around me are like, Diego, come on, man, you need to get back to your old ways of taking people down, and I'm like, yeah, I know, but it's just when you're out there and you feel the pressure of the crowd, and it's like you want to get that big knockout, especially for my last fight. I was fighting in front of my hometown, and I wanted to give them that knockout. And so, I was going for it, and it didn't come. And in the end, I probably should have went to my wrestling and looking at grappling and took the fight there. But now I'm getting a little older, and I need to, fight smarter, and so that's one thing I've been working on. But hey, like I said, I'm a scrapper, and when it comes down to it, and we're in the cage, sometimes I'm just gonna, flip the switch and get down.
Absolutely, Diego. It's funny that you mention that, because one of the biggest things that we've gotten, because we get a lot of messages here on the show, is a lot of your huge fans would love to see, do some grappling again. So I think it just shows that whatever you do in the ring, people are always excited to see it. But you mentioned your last fight with Ross Pearson at UFC Fight Night 42. Obviously, you won the fight, but there was a little bit of criticism about the judge's decision. You mentioned that you wanted to get the big knockout, you didn't get it, and that was one of the things that sort of caused the fight to play out the way it did. But I just wanted to ask you, how did you feel about the whole situation with the fight? Obviously, you won the fight, the judges made a decision, and guys like Dana White, the UFC, criticized the decision. That couldn't have been an easy position to be in, right?
Oh, no, it never is. No, it's not the first time in my career I've been in that hot seat. And it's just a part of the sport. And as you get older and you get more wise and you get more experience, you're gonna go through almost every situation there is. And that's basically the case I'm in. I've been in almost every type of fight, win, lose, draw, and in that particular fight, the judges gave me the nod. All I can say is I went in there and I fought with all my heart, and I left it all in the cage, and it was a close fight, and the judges obviously felt that I won the fight, and I know that there was a lot of people out there who disagreed, but there was also a lot of people that supported that decision, and the fans on my Twitter, I got a tremendous amount of support of positive feedback of fans. Plenty of fans believing that I won round 1 and I won round 3. I'll give round 2 to Ross, and Ross fought very tough, and he fought a good fight, and like I said immediately after the fight, I'm willing to give Ross a rematch at any time. If the UFC is willing to put it together, I would love to fight him again and give him another opportunity if that's what the UFC wanted to do. But the UFC isn't interested in doing that, so I'm just gonna move forward in my career, and in the end, it all gets washed out in the end, and the next fight is gonna be the next fight, and it's part of my legacy, and that's just the way I feel about that fight. I feel I won the fight. I feel I won round 1 and won round 3. I put the pressure the whole fight. I was coming after him, going for the finish. He dropped me in round 2, but besides that, I didn't feel like he was really trying to finish me or anything. He landed some body shots, and but it was a good fight, and I was happy with the result.
And you mentioned your legion of fans, obviously on the Twitter, all over the place. And when we told everybody that you were coming to the show, everybody sent in their fan questions. So we're going to ask you some of those in just a moment. But before we go further, we were talking about Norman Park before. He's obviously Irish. He's not the only Irish guy that was calling you out just not too long ago. Obviously, you and Conor McGregor had a bit of a history last year. It seems like, the beef has simmered down. But Conor McGregor, he's back in the spotlight, and you're always popular. Would there be any chance of you and Conor McGregor possibly fighting and doing a big fight?
You know what, man? I don't know. I would love to fight this guy, and he said he'd like to fight me too, so I definitely think it's possible. I think he's a great mixer. I think he's really talented. I think he's really tough, and I just don't agree with people going out there and thinking that this guy thinks he's like the Anderson Silva. He claims that he's the GOAT, and I'm just like, come on, man. You ain't done enough to claim that you're. I'm all for believing in yourself, but it's like he's taking it to the next level, and if he gets past Dustin Poirier, then he's definitely on that level. But he has that next fight, a tough fight. But if we get a fight, we get a fight. And I've even possibly thought about going down to 145 just to fight him. Like matter of fact, yesterday I was in my gym working out, and I was like, oh, could I do it? Could I make 145? I was like, I don't know. I was like, I might have to try. I might have to do it. And I was like, but would it be worth it for one fight to go down to 145? I'm like, would it really be worth it? I was like, I'm gonna have to do like a 10-day fast. I'm like, I'm gonna have to really sacrifice to get down to 145. I'm gonna have to lose some muscle. And I was really giving it some serious thought. I'm like, but what if I'm stronger? What if I'm stringy? Like I'm going to be long and stringy at that weight. I was seriously giving it some consideration. And it's not out of the question. It definitely is not out of the question. I might have to do a fight at 145 and give it a try. We'll see. But as for now, I've been lifting weights. And I'm loving getting stronger. And in 2012, I had to get a shoulder surgery, and I had some knee problems. And I've made full recovery. And finally, 2 years later, I'm able to lift weights again. And I'm really trying to get strong and get that physical strength that I need to fight that style that was the Diego Sanchez that came into the UFC, that strong wrestler that used to take people down and just manhandle people and put them on the ground and pound them. And that's something I've been working on. I'm trying to get my strength back on, and I'm working with a really, really good strength and conditioning coach, and he's confident that I'll be stronger than I've ever been, and so that's where I'm at right now.
Awesome, Diego. Now we got a couple of quick fan questions, so we'll kick it right off. McGrubby wants to know, do you still eat raw quail eggs?
Hell no. Hell no, I never did, and I made a mistake, man. In Dallas, and I ate some raw meat, and I don't know. I'll probably never eat raw meat again, to be honest. Like my steaks, I'm having them medium now. I'm not even going into the medium rare. Like I was so traumatized. After that experience, and it was a rough one. But I'm back to I learned my lesson the hard way. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Now Lost wants to know, what is the story? I think some people know this, but for the ones that don't, what is the story behind your yes chant that you're famous for?
Yes chant. It all comes back to a Tony Robbins seminar.
Mm-hmm.
I learned the yes out there at the Tony Robbins seminar in LA, and it's something that Anthony Robbins incorporates into his mental strength program, and it's just something that I carried on into my career. The yeses come out every now and then when I get really excited, but I'm not as hardcore. I'm not as hardcore as I used to be with the yeses, but they do come out when they need to come out.
And just quickly, just on that question, what's the strangest place that a yes has come out, say, out of the octagon?
The strangest place that the yes has come out, I'm not sure, but I think maybe probably in the bedroom with my wife, maybe.
Oh man!
Awesome. Now, Diego, we've got one last fan question before we jump to the top out round. Director 101 would like to know, could you please tell us one of the craziest things that you have seen or been a part of behind the UFC scenes that the public has never seen or has never known about?
One of the craziest things was when I was going to fight Nick Diaz, how prior to the fight, he somehow found my email and I don't know how he got my email, but he got my email, and it really was Nick Diaz. And like he was saying, like about 2 months before the fight, like he was emailing me, just like the worst emails, like totally talking shit, saying like really, really bad stuff about my mom, my dad, my family, really trying to get under my skin, and he did, and it really was more than just a fight. It was there was some hate in that fight, and up to the point to where before the fight, like we were so adamant about killing each other, and that like he took his shoe off in the pre-warm-up and threw his shoe at me, and Greg Jackson had to hold me back, and you know there was a lot more drama in that than people know, you know, and so that's probably the craziest thing was me and Nick Diaz and the emails and taking off his shoe and just the relationship that we had going into that.
Wow.
Bad one.
That is crazy. Now, Diego, we're going to let you go really soon because I know you're going to have dinner real quick. But before we do, we're going to do a quick tap-out round with you. It's just basically fun round. We throw a bunch of questions at you, and you answer them more or less as quickly as possible, kind of like word association. Are you ready?
All right, gotcha.
All right, so what are some places, and has Carl Noakes suggested some places that you see while you're down here in Australia?
Definitely the ocean, you know. Try to see the ocean again.
When you come down to Australia, you're going to be doing MMA seminars and dinners with everything MMA. But what's the best advice that an MMA coach has ever given you in your career?
Don't do drugs.
Definitely good advice. How many times have you watched the episode of The Simpsons where Bart calls Australia to prepare yourself for the craziness of Melbourne and Perth?
Never.
Well, I think it's something that you need to do, Diego, if you get a time. Now, is there a way for a fighter to learn to have more heart?
Yes. Get your ass kicked, and you'll never want to get your ass kicked again, and that's probably the easiest way of learning how to get some more heart.
Now, the Yes Chant. Will this be a part of the seminar for all the Aussie fans?
Definitely, the Yes Chant will be a part of the seminar, and I know the Aussies are ready for the yes.
Mm-hmm.
What's the secret talent that Diego Sanchez has that we don't know about?
I would have to say, I don't know. That's a tough one. I have to think about my secret talent because I think I'm keeping it a secret from myself.
I guess your talent is fighting, so it's not so much a secret. All right, now everyone knows how much heart you have. We've got 3 questions for you. Who had more heart? And you got to choose from one of the 3. There's Rocky Balboa in the first movie. There's the evil Terminator in Terminator 2, the car scene where he runs after the cars and turns his hands into hooks and doesn't give up. Or Mike the Situation from the Jersey Shore when he tries to pick up girls and he won't throw in the towel until he finds one willing to bite the bullet and talk to him.
I'd have to go with the evil Terminator and Terminator 2.
Fantastic. And final question, Diego. This August, when you come down to Australia, I know you've said it, that you've said some of the great stuff that you're going to be doing, but what's one thing that fans could look forward to when they come meet you down under?
Just some good old positive energy, happiness, joy, and I'm going to be bringing some good techniques, and I'm just bringing great gratitude because I'm just very happy to be able to go out and visit you guys again, and it's no worries on my part. No worries on my part.
Well, guys, we're absolutely going to be looking forward to Diego, and obviously for anyone listening, you can meet Diego Sanchez in person in Melbourne and in Perth, August 15th and 17th. The seminar and dinner package is available through everythingmma.com.au, and of course, don't forget to follow Diego on Twitter at Diego Sanchez UFC. Diego, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for being on Submission Radio.
Oh, thank you so much, and I can't wait to see everybody, and it's going to be a very, very awesome trip to Australia.
Yes, what a great interview. Diego Sanchez. I was a big fan of Diego, and here's a little fact. And, Cass, this obviously. Up in the Submission Radio office, there's UFC action figure. It's in its pack. It hasn't been opened. There's only one, and it's none other than Diego Sanchez's. We are big fans of Diego. We've put up pictures of this action figure on our Twitter before, and it was just a real pleasure getting Diego on the show. And who would have thought he has such a great sense of humor. The guy is just a really nice guy. And all the fans listening in Australia, if you do want to meet Diego or have a seminar with him, just check out everythingmma.com.au. Diego's going to be down here on the 15th and 17th.
Yeah, and for all the fans that didn't know, every second Wednesday we walk past and we smell the action figure and then we light some candles around it. Nothing sus. But yeah, great having Diego Sanchez on the show. What a crazy story about Nick Diaz throwing his shoe, huh?
Yeah, back in high school, I believe you and me used to throw our shoes once in a while, but that's a story for a different type of show with different types of people. I feel like there's going to be a high school Jerry Springer one day, and they're going to bring us out. But it was a ridiculous story. I mean, that's cyberbullying. I feel like I can call up a police station somewhere in the States and dub Nick in. I mean, there you go. Though a lot of people say, hey, he's all verbal, but he writes emails too, and I bet those are some bad emails. And I'm not just talking from a grammatical standpoint. I mean, there's probably some mean things said in those emails.
Yeah, hey man, Nick Diaz, he's a man of technology. So who would have thought it? I bet that old lady that I bet you wound down her window and abused Nick before the GSP fight. I'm sure she got an angry email in red bold writing as well.
Yeah, that's right. I think a lot of MMA journalists right now are getting pissed off when they realize that Nick Diaz actually does know how to use his email, and he's just choosing not to email any one of us back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, Nick, you got us. But I'll tell you what, man. Good on Nick Diaz. This is just another side that can be covered in a countdown with Joe Rogan discussing it. the effects of emails before fights, the mental effects of emails before fights.
Yeah, cue the dramatic music. But it's time to cue the excitement music because we got another sexy guest coming on Submission Radio.
That's right. We could have had Jim Carrey, but who needs Jim Carrey when you have our next guest? He's the VP of ONE FC. We're very excited to have a chat to him. ONE FC having some big shows. A big show in Dubai in August. Then I'm going to stop by Australia first. I think we have a bit of a bone to pick with the man. And yeah, we've got Rich on the phone and he's ready to go. So let's set this one up, Cass, and let's get Rich on the show.
Alrighty, guys. Our next guest needs very little introduction. He is a 3-time UFC middleweight champion. He is a future Hall of Famer, an all-around MMA legend. He is none other than Rich Franklin. Rich, welcome back to Submission Radio.
Hey, it's good to have me on again, guys. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. It's great to have you back on. Now, the last time we spoke, or since the last time we spoke, you've become the VP of ONE FC. Tell us, how exactly did that come about, and do you put VP in front of your name when filling out forms? Because we would totally do that.
Not yet, but I'm going to start doing that. It's actually a good idea. So I think what I'm going to start doing is just putting all my credentials, 3-time world champ, VP, it's just I'll be like Apollo Creed in Rocky IV when he had all the nicknames with him right now.
Yeah, this is like Starbucks. You're ordering coffee and you're like, it's like, what name? It's like, well, 3-time middleweight champion, ONE FC VP, Rich Franklin, please.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty much that standard anytime I go to Starbucks. So But no, I did a seminar down in Singapore several years ago, and then I was involved where I did a seminar with Matt Hume, and I ended up going back to Evolve a couple times to conduct a few of my camps there. And in doing so, I met some of the ONE FC people, the people that work on the business side of things, and there were some conversations about possibly me taking a job with them at one point, and then that started to materialize. So basically, after certain conversations, I went to the UFC and said, "Hey guys, what's your plan with me post retirement?" They talked to me about using me in that company, but they really didn't have a position for me. And I said, "Well, ONE FC is offered me a job, and I'd be interested in taking it if you guys don't have anything for me here." And they basically said, "It sounds like a good opportunity. You should take it," which was surprising to me, but they did. And so that's kind of how the job came about. And so I've been on staff now for a couple months with them, and things are going really well. I'm enjoying my position.
Now, Rich, for people in Australia who don't know, ONE FC puts on great shows, and you guys have really good attendance at the shows as well. I'm just curious, from your perspective, where does ONE FC fit into this whole puzzle with the UFC and Bellator and World Series of Fighting? In your mind, where does it fit?
Well, Asia's a big place. You look at the population of Asia, and it's tremendous compared to North America or North and South America or whatever. And so there's a big piece of the pie here that's untapped. And the thing that ONE FC does is they really focus on their Asian fighters. They have to. We're doing shows in Malaysia. We're doing shows in Singapore, Taiwan. We're going to Dubai for at the end of August for the next show. But and then after that we have Cambodia, and I've laid some of the groundwork in Cambodia. Went and did a little PR tour for them in Cambodia. But they're all over the place, and they have to be able to pull fighters from all these local areas. So I think it's a different product than the UFC is offering completely. The UFC is trying to come over to Asia. They've done a couple shows now on in Chinese soil, but they haven't gone to mainland yet. And ONE FC plans to go to mainland China before the end of the year. And they'll do a couple shows in mainland China, and then that's going to continue next year as well. So it's a much different product. They're really focused on Asia. They're Asian fighters, and once they have a real stronghold there, things will continue to develop. It's a slightly different environment because MMA is still a newer concept on that side of the globe. They have their talent pool is really, really strong, but once you get beyond 4 and 5 fighters deep, the number of fighters in Asia that are that talented, it's really difficult to find this talent. And so there's going to be some years of development, but we have some amazing fighters and put on great shows. If you've never attended a ONE FC show live, they're awesome shows. And in the matchups, Matt Hume does a great job with the matchups, and it's a well-run organization. Victor Quees, the president, does a great job running the organization, and overall, just good people to work with.
And just, Rich, in terms of how ONE FC's been received there, obviously, in America, the fans are one way, in Europe, the fans are one way, obviously in Pride, the fans were, very different. How are the fans in ONE FC, and how do they sort of take on the product?
It varies. I mean, it varies from nation to nation. And I've only been with the organization working in my position now for a couple of months, so I've only seen 2 shows live. I've seen the Taiwan show that we just had live, and I saw the show that we did in Singapore live. And I would say of all the nations that I've been to in Asia, Singapore is definitely the most, I guess, kind of westernized. We have a show in the Philippines before the end of the year. I know that Jakarta does, or not Jakarta, but Manila does some of our biggest shows. And from what I've seen, not just in person, but from the other shows that I've watched online, like the fans are really, really excited, which is much different than the experience I had when I fought in Japan, for example, because the Japanese fans, when I fought there, was really, really quiet, like watching a tennis match. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't seem to be that way across the board. So, it's really kind of an exciting thing to watch this spread across Asia, honestly.
Now, Rich, like you've mentioned, you've done shows in Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Dubai. You got coming up in August in Cambodia. It's bone-picking time, Rich. Why isn't Australia on that list? We're sort of a part of Asia. We're very close. We're like a neighbor. Why aren't we on the list? What's going on? Dubai gets a show before us?
I don't know how Dubai got a show before you guys. Obviously, listen, I've only been there for 2 months, but believe me, I'm going to be pushing for them to bring a show to Australia for sure. And I'm sure this whole show with Dubai was in the works well before I got there. But they'll have some explaining to do as to why they decided to basically go to the Middle East as opposed to their brother country down there. I'm not really sure, so I can't speak on behalf of Victor for that one.
That's all right. Now, I wanted to ask you, Rich, have you had, in terms of ONE FC and the product, have you had a chat to Dana about it much? Maybe get some ideas. And what's ONE FC's relationship like with the UFC? Because obviously, developing fighters and growing MMA in Asia, it's so important in general.
Yeah, I haven't personally spoke to anybody over at the UFC. I know that I believe that Victor has a good working relationship with the UFC. I don't know the nature of that. And I think at this point, just for example, here in the States, when I tweet out stuff about ONE FC, I'll have a lot of people that just flat out they don't know what ONE FC is yet, and so I don't know if the UFC really views ONE FC as a competitor like a Bellator or something like that that's really threatening to them, especially on this side of the pond, so to speak.
Absolutely, Richard. UFC, they've got the Fight Pass out. They put in Victor on that Fight Pass. So would you see Fight Pass as a means to get ONE FC out in America if you guys are looking to expand, the reputation of ONE FC, like you mentioned, in the US? Some people may not know what it is.
I don't really know. I don't know if they'll follow the same plan that ONE FC is, because the nature of ONE FC, their whole business plan is different. The concept of pay-per-view over here in Asia is not the same as it is in the U.S. And so all the ONE FCs, they're broadcast live on Star Sports or ESPN and things like that, and they don't depend on their pay-per-view sales, on a pay-per-view sale in order to make their revenue. They're doing live broadcasting, and then money comes in from endorsements and sponsors and things like that, and television rights. So it's a different plan altogether. I don't know. I don't know how that'll pan out in the future for Fight Pass and all that kind of stuff. And that's that'd probably be a better question for Victor. I'll just say this much. You have to realize that ONE FC at this point in time, they're an organization that's had what have we done? 18 shows now, and for 18 shows, they do an amazing production, put on an amazing show, and just we're growing exponentially every show. So I would look for something like that in the future. I don't know if it'll develop the same as it did in the States.
Now, Rich, you're often in the news now in regards to ONE FC, but a lot of the fans, they keep talking about your final match or your final fight in the UFC, talking about your next fight and last one. Have you recently thought about any possible opponents for your final fight, and are we any closer to knowing anything about when you'll be back in the octagon?
No, not yet. I'm really acclimating to this job right now. It's a decision that I'm going to have to make real soon, and I really need to sit down with the people at ONE FC and talk about that, the reality of, because I have some responsibilities here, and I'm traveling quite a bit back and forth between the States and Asia now, and what the reality is of me continuing with my responsibilities with ONE FC, and then also prepping for a fight and all that kind of stuff. And I'll have to sit down with them real soon and talk to them about that, because I'm getting at a point now where I need to pull the trigger on that last fight, because I'm so far distanced from my previous fight that basically if I'm going to do something, I need to do it now, type of thing.
Sorry to cut in, Dennis. Do you feel almost like, people talk about ring rust and things like that. Do you feel almost like, if when you do get that fight and you do sort of start training, do you feel like there'll be a big sort of start over process for you?
I'm sure, which is why I wouldn't accept a fight and just go straight into fight training and prepping for an opponent. There will be some time where I acclimate back into training, and and not that I'm not training. I train basically every day. I do something, but there's a difference between this kind of what I will call recreational training and prepping for an opponent. And so I'll spend some time just putting myself back into getting into the groove of things before I actually start prepping for a fight.
And, Rich, there's been some big fights in the UFC of late, and we were just wanting to get your thoughts. What did you think about the big Weidman versus Machida fight? Did you get a chance to watch it? And what do you think of Weidman as a champion? Because I think a lot of people are pretty impressed with how he's going so far.
No, but I don't know. I made the prediction on my social media that Weidman would win that fight. And the reason I didn't actually watch the fight. I was in transit traveling somewhere, and so I read about it and caught some highlights later. But I thought Weidman would win that fight only because looking at, after the first Anderson Silva fight, like there was a lot of people that thought that maybe it's a fluke, Anderson got caught, maybe Anderson underestimated him, blah blah blah, whatever. These kinds of things happen. But then you look at the second fight. Now, of course, the fight got stopped with injury. But prior to that, you could see that Weidman was controlling the fight. He was controlling the pace. And what really impresses me about him is that he's very patient as a fighter. Like, he's very patient, and then through his patience, he's able to make his game plan unfold, which is something that Machida is really good at. But Anderson and Lyoto, they have that similar style, that kind of like sit back in the pocket, counter punch, depend on their timing. Lyoto does a really good job of sucking you into his game because he's a very patient fighter. But Weidman didn't let that happen with Anderson, and so I kind of figured that he would have Lyoto's number, and that's what ended up happening with that fight. I'm a believer. I think I think there are people out there that are still questioning whether or not Weidman's legit or if there was some fluke wins or whatever. But I'm a believer in Weidman, and I think he's going to make a great champion. So I think he'll be around for a little while.
Yeah, and I think Weidman definitely proved himself in that fight, and proved the critics wrong. As well as speaking of the middleweight division, there's also been some issues in that division in regards to some of the drugs in MMA. A couple of these fighters, obviously, you fought, like Wanderlei, Vitor Belfort, and of course, there was one-time talk of Chael Sonnen with the whole Twitter situation. What are your thoughts on these situations and what happened with these guys?
Well, look, the thing with sports, listen, TRT and all that kind of stuff, you really need to take a step back. And before you get to these fighters, you need to look at the situation that the sport got into. There was a time when we started talking about TRT and allowing this and not allowing this, and basically the athletic commission decided that they were going to allow the fighters to use it, that they thought that they could regulate it. Well, you know how things go. You give somebody an inch, and they're going to take a mile, and that's what happens. And so, once you allow these kinds of things to happen, it's you're just setting yourself up for problems. And I think that that's basically what ended up happening. And so now, as the UFC as an organization, they have to kind of backpedal, and they have to say, well, we're just going to have a zero tolerance policy with this. Which, one way or the other, you would have had to go that way. You would have had to say, you know what? We're just going to completely ignore this and let people do what they're going to do, or we have a zero tolerance policy. And so they ended up with the zero tolerance policy. And it's going to be difficult. I've spoken about this before. This is going to be a very difficult thing for the athletic commissions in the UFC to regulate, because you're going to different countries now. In the United States, things they're set up like you have urinalysis facilities and all that kind of stuff. And not to say that people can't be crooked, but it's a lot easier to be crooked when you're getting your urinalysis done in a place like Brazil, where there may not be as much regulation and stuff like that, where a fighter can go in and have somebody possibly pee for him, or even the doctor at the urinalysis place. Like, you don't know what kind of practices are going on in different countries, especially when you're off the beaten path a little bit. And this is going to be problematic. It's going to be problematic for the UFC for time to come. And so I don't know how they're going to overcome that obstacle, to be real honest.
Yeah, that's a great point there, Rich. We've spoken to a few fighters, and a couple of things that we've gotten back in feedback is a couple of fighters, they're a little bit disappointed where they find out some of their past opponents, have been caught with certain substances, or they're having some issues. Knowing that you fought Wanderlei and Vitor, does it ever play in your mind that, I fought these guys, and I don't know if they were on anything or not, but now it's proven that there were times in their career where they might have been on something. Does that make you think about those matchups that you had with them?
Yeah, I mean, naturally, when you read about something like that, your first thought is, well, I wonder if that was the case when I was fighting. Because from the inception of this sport on to modern day today, like, there are going to be people that once they start testing, they know how to beat the system, and then when they have more strenuous testing, people have better ways of beating the system. And you see it in other sports. You see things in baseball where all of a sudden a baseball player gets caught. And I would imagine that the fan's initial reaction, a fan, would say, like, well, why would this baseball player do this knowing that they're doing all this testing now and they could get caught? Well, the reason why is because things like this, they never stop. People just figure out ways to beat the system. They can beat, they know how to, like, step down chemicals or use masking agents or do whatever it is that they're doing, but they figured out ways to beat the system. And so it'll always be a problem. I mean, that's what ends up happening. It's like any system is like that. You take technology, for example. I write a program, then somebody out there writes a way to hack the program, so I have to update my program. And you basically, what the whole battle is staying ahead of the hacker, and that's essentially what you have to do. Like, your rigorous testing abilities and ways to detect things have to stay ahead of the ways that people are going to use these substances. And so, going back to the original question, like, yeah, you start thinking, like, well, was that the case when we were fighting? And what is, what was, what could have been, what may have been. There was no positive test at the time, so I'm not going to sit here and kill myself over wondering. But the thought crosses your mind.
Yeah, of course. Very well put, Rich. Now, as opposed to the past, looking to the future, before we jump to the tap-out round and answer fan questions, Zealand, one of the best juice and food places in California, had a major announcement last month, and can you share it with the listeners?
Yeah, well, we sold our cafe last month, which was probably partially a blessing. I loved having my cafe, but doing a brick-and-mortar store in California is a ton of work. So we're able to actually find a buyer for the cafe. Somebody bought the cafe, and we're focusing in on wholesaling our products. Right now we're going through some rigorous FDA testing and stuff like that to looking at, like, shelf life and stuff like that. We have a good idea on how we can increase the shelf life of the current product on the market. And if we're successful with this, then it can be a game changer in the industry. If not, then we will be much like every other juicing company out there, except for, I think, our recipes taste way better. So we'll see. I should know something in the next couple of months on that.
Oh, absolutely. And you'll have to let us know as well, because, all your Australian fans are still waiting for an opportunity to get some good old Zealand down under. So you'll have to keep us on top of that. And speaking of you fans down under, we've got a couple of fan questions for you, Rich. So when you're ready, we'll shoot a couple your way.
Let's do this, man.
So,
all right.
Clear 31 wants to know one fighter you wish to have fought, past or present.
One fighter that I wish to have fought, past or present?
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I would like to fight Bruce Lee. I think Bruce was such a pioneer of MMA. He's been titled the father of MMA because of his philosophy of his martial arts systems, and there's not a lot of documented combat of his. So it would have been interesting to just kind of to play that realm with somebody like that.
That's a very good point. But imagine if you beat him up, then I feel like you'd feel bad. Like, people would be like, oh no.
You know what? First of all, I don't even know what I would do. That's like, honestly, if that happened, that would be the equivalent of when I was like 7 and I found out there was, I don't know if I should say this on the radio, there was no Santa.
There's no Santa? Damn it.
Breaking hearts, Rich.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, you can always...
Yeah, I don't know if any of the listeners are going to be like, wait a minute, my kid is 7.
Yeah, you just lost a large portion of our listeners for us, Rich. No, that's fine. Now, Magnum 1978 wants to know, what rules and scoring system do you prefer, the unified rules or the global rules of MMA, the rule set and judging system used by ONE FC?
Yeah, so this is some getting used to for me. I'm going to be honest. I've been indoctrinated with the unified rules, and the first time that I'd seen the global rules was for the show that I attended back in May, the Singapore show that I went to, and one of the fighters landed a nice little kick to the head, and live. And knowing that that's going to happen and actually seeing it happen is a different thing, because I haven't seen anything like that since Pride. Basically, what ONE FC did is they looked at the rules, the rules that could have existed and that did exist in Pride. And they basically took the rules that really didn't put the fighters in any more danger, like knees to the head on the ground and knees to the head, or kicking to the head on the ground. And you're still not allowed to stomp an opponent with a downward stomp, but it just changes the nature of the fight. A wrestler can't shoot in and then get stuffed on the shot and then sit there on all fours, because somebody stuffing the shot can, when they sprawl out, they have the ability to basically start kneeing them in the head. And so what it does is it really forces you to kind of, choose your strategy intelligently, and two, keep the fight moving. You're not just going to put a knee down when you're in that position and not get kneed in the head. And it really is like when I saw the kick land on the ground, it really wasn't much different than watching somebody get kicked in the face standing up either. It's about the same either way. So from an excitement standpoint, I definitely am quickly learning to enjoy the global rules much better.
Awesome. And Brown Pride wants to know who hit you the hardest, and who was your best knockout?
What was the first part of that question?
The first part was who has hit you the hardest in a fight, and who was your best knockout?
Well, I'll tell you, I have two people that hit me the hardest. And one was before I was in the UFC. I fought a guy by the name of Aaron Brink, and I was sick for that fight. I had over 104 fever, and I just remember this guy came out and hit me right off the bat, and it snapped my head so far back that I was looking at the ceiling, staring at the light fixtures. But I tell you, I think the hardest person that's ever hit me in my career is probably Chuck. Chuck has very, very heavy hands. And just every time he would hit me with something, I mean, he kicked me and broke my arm. So every time he hit me, it just felt like he was like swinging a sledgehammer and it was crashing into my body or hit me in the face or whatever. So definitely Chuck. And my best knockout. I mean, the one that they play all the time is the Nate Corey knockout, and so that's just, it's one of those. When you have a clean knockout, I'll just say that when you have a clean knockout, it's just one of those things that you don't really throw the punch hard. And when it connects, it's all about the timing, and as soon as it happens, that it's lights out, because it's just everything connects. And that's what I remember about that punch, is just when it landed, thinking like, I didn't throw that punch that hard, but everything just kind of came together at the right.
And I always imagine that's what it would feel like if I was a fighter, Rich. So thank you for taking us into the mindset of how it feels. Now we've got the tap out round. It's been voted as in the top 3 sexiest MMA segments in the world. So we're going to throw some questions at you. They're like quick questions that you answer off the top of your head. We did this last time.
Well, you had me all excited because I thought you were saying that I was voted one of the top 3 sexiest MMA fighters in the world, but this was not about me. It was about the questioning sequence. And now I'm all discombobulated. I'm not sure I'm going to do well at this.
Well,
let's give it a go.
We can release an article and we can put you in the top 3, Rich. So don't worry, that can happen as well.
You know what? That's voted by Submission Radio.
There you go.
That's right. And you're joining Wanderlei Silva and Diego Sanchez on the episode this week. So you're definitely in the top 3 sexiest this week as well. But let's kick it off now, Rich. When you return for your one fight, of course you'll return to your natural weight class of middleweight or light heavyweight. But in case you didn't, we've got some options for you that we'd like you to consider. If you could return for a fight in one weight class and just any weight class, which one would you choose? Options include super heavyweight, featherweight, flyweight, and pride.
Open weight.
Let me make sure. Am I going to fight 155 or flyweight at my current weight, or am I going to be a 125-pound version of myself?
No. You jump into a machine that turns you into a super heavyweight, or it turns you into a featherweight, or it turns you into a flyweight, or a pride open weight.
I'll go with a flyweight because I would love to. Let me make sure. Hold on. Now I'm confused. Is flyweight the smallest class?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so I've trained with Demetrius Johnson before, and I've trained with him at my weight, and I remember we were doing some guard casting drills, and he's just like all over the place. So it would be interesting to see what it would be like. Like, the only advantage I had was the fact that I outweighed him by 60 plus pounds or whatever, 80 plus pounds probably, because I wasn't cutting for a fight at that point in time. But it would be interesting to fight somebody like that that's that fast at that weight, just to see how difficult that would actually be for me.
Yeah, definitely. Now, with the growing up popularity of grappling events, could we possibly see Rich Franklin in a Metamoris event one day?
I don't know. Probably not. I've never been really excited about grappling events, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't had much success in them either. I've done one grappling event in my life, and I got smoked bad. I'd only been training for like 3 months, but I grappled a guy that had been grappling for over a year, and he basically tried a flying armbar that transitioned to a triangle, back to an armbar, back to a triangle. This was every bit of about 35 seconds, and it was bad news for me. I'll say this much: my grappling style is very MMA oriented. I'm all about positioning and being able to strike, and I honestly, like, I don't have like a really slick submission game, and so I don't know if like just out positioning somebody and looking for points and winning and stuff like that is makes great for. It's almost disrespectful to the art of grappling, so to speak. You know what I mean?
You're too humble, man. I'm sure you would have done fine. Now, this is an interesting one. ONE FC names its cards, which brought us to bring up some of the worst UFC pay-per-view card names, and we've brought up 3 options for you. We'd like you to choose what was the worst UFC pay-per-view card name. Okay, so option number 1 is UFC 85. It was called Bedlam. The main event was Thiago Alves versus Matt Hughes. We don't know why it was called Bedlam. UFC 76.
It was called what?
It was called Bedlam. Bedlam. I don't know why they call. Yeah, why did they call it Bedlam? I don't know. UFC 76 was called Knockout. The main event was Liddell versus Jardine. There were no knockouts on the entire card. The UFC and the third option was UFC 87. It was called Seek and Destroy. Why was it called Seek and Destroy? We're not sure, but it was called Seek and Destroy. Please choose the one that you think is the worst.
We're gonna have to go with Knockout since it did happen.
I feel like there was
not one knockout.
Did they jinx themselves by doing that? Like, nobody knocked on wood when they named the card Knockout.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, maybe they, have they ever had a card called Submission where nobody got submitted either?
What about a card called Lay and Pray, and then everybody got knocked out, but everyone was happy that it didn't live up to the name?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's what they need to do. Then what they need to do is call UFC Decision. And then none of the fights go to decision.
That would be hilarious. Now, Rich, last 2 questions. What's the biggest difference about being on the other side of the fence and being a VP as opposed to a fighter?
Oh, man, the biggest difference. Man, there's a ton of them. I think I don't know if this is the biggest difference, but the thing that I notice the most is when I'm sitting cage side. Like, I'll be sitting there cage side, and I'll be, like, weaving my head, and, like, as if I'm fighting or cornering the fighter or something like that. Like, being at the arena still puts me in the mental mind state as if I'm fighting, basically. And that's kind of a weird thing to deal with, because there has to come a point in time where it's like, okay, I'm not fighting. I need to let that go, or at least let that go for the 3 to 4 hours that I'm going to be sitting in the arena watching this thing. And so that's something that's been really tricky for me.
And finally, Rich, there's a lot of great fighters in ONE FC. Give us a name. Give us a name of a ONE FC fighter that we might not know about, but we should put on our radar and keep an eye on. All the MMA fans in Australia should Google after this interview. What's the name in ONE FC that we'll be seeing more and more of in the future?
Well, you guys, do you know who Rob Lucida? Because he's from Australia, though.
We've heard of him. I think we've seen about 1 or 2 of his fights.
Okay, yeah, he just lost his last fight, but I'll tell you, man, he was running the show the whole fight. I really enjoyed watching him as a fighter, and he's exciting, and he's a bulldog, and he just, like I said, he was winning the fight, made a mistake, ended up costing him, and ended up costing the fight. But great little fighters from Australia, but I'll be real honest. Like on the next card, I'm really interested in seeing Shinya Yoki. He's a Japanese guy fight. I haven't seen him fight live yet, and that's one of just several names that you can definitely look out for. And he's from I've seen tapes of him, but it'll be nice to see him fight live. So that's what I'm really interested in seeing on the Dubai card.
Well, there you go, guys. You can follow Rich at Rich Franklin on Twitter, or you can check out 1FC at 1FC MMA. Make sure you follow them. They have an event, 1FC 19 Reign of Champions. It's on August 29th in Dubai, United Emirates, not in Australia. For some reason, they went to Dubai, but that's okay. We'll check out the card. And Rich, keep us in touch. Let's stay in touch and let us know how 1FC is doing, because we're very excited about it.
For sure. And you know what? I tell you what, we could maybe one day I'll end up when I'm down there for a show. We have a show coming up in Singapore or something like that. Maybe I can jump on a little plane, head over that way, and do a seminar, or a couple seminars over in Australia while I'm on that side of the earth or something.
For sure. Well, Diego Sanchez has his seminar coming down. People are always coming to Australia, so I'm sure we'd all absolutely love to have Rich Ace Franklin come down and teach us some moves.
For sure, man. All right. Well, we'll talk sometime soon in the future.
Awesome. Rich, thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, guys, this is Chad Money Mendez, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next guest is a Pride middleweight champion, the 2003 Pride Middleweight Grand Prix tournament winner, the 2005 Pride Middleweight Grand Prix semifinalist, the 2006 Pride Openweight Grand Prix semifinalist. He's got the longest undefeated streak in Pride Fight Championship history, and he is a UFC legend. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the axe murderer himself, Wanderlei Silva, on Submission Radio. Wanderlei, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Well, welcome. Thanks for this great opportunity to talk with my Australian fans.
All right, well, the opportunity is all ours. Now, Wanderlei, getting straight into the interview, what happened in the World Cup with Brazil? Obviously, Brazil was devastated with the soccer. How did you go about it when Brazil didn't pull through in that one?
I think in the Brazil lost just because the guys don't invite me to play. I'm playing, it's never gonna happen.
more than likely, that's probably the reason. As far as, let's talk fighting, Wanderlei. A lot of fans, they want to see you back in the octagon. They all want to see you fighting. But a lot of fans, especially Australian fans, they're worrying that this might be the last time we see you in the octagon. How exactly is the process going with getting your license back, and when can we see a fight with you?
All the thing is good to me. I'm still training, and UFC have a lot of events around the world, and I hope the event invites me to fight some.
Absolutely. Now, Wanderlei, it doesn't look like your fight with Chael Sonnen is going to happen. How disappointed are you that you won't get an opportunity to fight Chael now that he's retired from the sport of MMA?
I think he's retired just right now. I think after finishing his suspension, he's gonna back. I hope this fight is gonna happen.
And assuming if he comes back, if he unretires, would you still be interested in completing the saga with him and having the fight?
Yeah, of course. I think him and Belfort is just the two good fights can have a reason to happen for me.
Absolutely. And Wanderlei, were you a little bit disappointed in Chael Sonnen when you found out about his test results and the fact that, he was resulting to possibly taking a couple of things he shouldn't to prepare for your fight with him?
Yeah, this is bad for everyone. No, bad for him, bad for me, bad for the fans who want so much that fight. But I'm gonna wait for him.
And tell us, in this fight, because a lot of people looking forward to it, how did you see the fight going with Chael? What was the plan?
He have just one way to fight, to take down and in the top of the ground. And for me, I try to knock out. I like to fight and stand up, and that's what's gonna happen. So I'm gonna try to knock out him. He's gonna try to hold me all the round.
Absolutely, Wanderlei. It's obviously why we're such big fans of you. Just wondering, you were opposing coaches in The Ultimate Fighter. No one really asked you, how did you enjoy the experience of coaching The Ultimate Fighter opposed to Chael? Did you enjoy the experience, and what did you get out of it?
Yeah, this would be great for me. I show my techniques. I train a lot of good guys. We open the doors to MMA in Brazil. We have a great audience, the biggest from all the shows. And I'm so glad to open the doors and make it a lot of opportunities to new fighters.
And tell us, obviously, from our perspective, we're here in Australia. MMA is getting bigger in Australia. In America, MMA is already very big. In Brazil, what about MMA in Brazil? Obviously, soccer's a huge sport, but how is MMA in Brazil as a sport in terms of popularity?
No, but Brazil is huge. I think it lost just to the soccer, because soccer in Brazil is a religion. But the fight is growing a lot. We have a lot of new fighters, a lot of new events. And everybody talking about fight in Brazil. We have a new sponsors. We have the marketing growing a lot. I'm so glad for happening that right now.
Now, Wanderlei, one of your good friends, Lyoto Machida, fought Chris Weidman for the title recently. Did you get a chance to watch the fight? And what did you think of Chris Weidman's performance?
Yeah, I think the champion is in great moment. Lyoto fighting very well. I think in him start to attack a little bit early, he gonna win the fight. I think he lost 3 rounds and won 2, and I hope they have another chance for the belt, because now he knows the way to beat the champ.
And I just wanted to ask your opinion because, your fighting style and Lyoto's are very different. But towards the end of the fight, Lyoto Machida was very much brawling with Chris Weidman. Were you surprised by that at all?
Yeah, no, I think it's one of the best fights of Lyoto. Lyoto's are more exciting. He attack more, I think in training for Rafael Cordeiro, put him in another level in the MMA, and I think he's going to fight him for the belt again.
Absolutely. Now, you've mentioned that you wanted to fight Chael and Vitor. Vitor's tied up, Chael's out, and there's been a few people calling you out. In particular, Luke Barnatt has been calling you out over at UFC Dublin. He said he wanted to fight you next. What do you think of Luke Barnatt? Do you know who he is, and do you think there's a potential there for a matchup?
Yeah, I think everything is good for the fans and for the event. I do it, no problem.
Well, simple. We love the attitude. So always down to fight. Now, in terms of fights, Wanderlei, a lot of fans are wondering. You've already had a legendary career. You've made fans all over the world. How much longer do you see yourself fighting for, and how many fights would you like to have?
I think in the last 2 fights, I make the 3 bonus the fight of the night, and the last fight I make 2 bonus fights of the night and knockout of the night. I make my fights exciting, and now I am really entertainment, and I still fighting good. And when the body working good, I go. When I can't do anymore, I'm gonna try to do other things. Right now, is good for me.
And Wanderlei, just wondering, obviously you're an amazing grappler. You're a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. If you and Chael never get an opportunity to do another MMA fight, would you ever want to have a grappling competition with Chael in a competition like Metamoris?
Yeah, why not? Why not? I think it's really interesting. I'm never thinking about that, but I think it's a good idea. I think I accept to do that with him.
Now, Wanderlei, you fought here in Australia at UFC 110 against Michael Bisping. It was extremely exciting for the Australian fans to see a legend like you come down and fight in our backyard. It was our first UFC in Australia. Tell us about your experience in Australia and interacting with the Aussie fans.
Oh, this is great for me. When I fight in Australia, I have a great moment. I have a lot of support from the Australian fans. I wanted to choose that moment to say thanks so much for all the Australian fans can be in the arena, and all the guys can tell good luck for me in the street and in the park can I be, and the guys are really support for me. I feel like I fight in my house, my home. I feel I love it, my Australian fans, and I have a great moment and a great victory in my career.
And we have a couple of fan questions for you, Wanderlei, so we'll jump right into them. We've got a couple of fan questions that got sent into the show. One of the first fan questions is from Conebone69. Conebone would like to know, what's one of the craziest stories that you can tell us from your experience fighting at Pride?
I think, one day the guys switched the opponents 2 days before the fight. Switched the opponents from one light heavyweight to one heavyweight. This is one history. And the other history, the guy is asking me to check the weight in the day of the fight. And I'm in the locker room. The guy say, "Hey, let's go check the weight." I check the weight. I had 2 kilos more. The guy say, "No, you need to lose that weight." I go into the sauna, make the weight back, and fight the day. It's crazy.
That's insane. Now, one of your fans, Sid Arthur, wants to know, which of your past fights did you enjoy the most?
I think against Chick Liddell, in 2007, is a great fight, one of the best fights in my career. I think that's one of the best, my best fights.
Absolutely. Gear Solid Metal would like to know, what do you prefer fighting in, a cage or a ring?
Both. Right now in the cage.
Now, one of your fans, Stana, wants to know, what is it like to first step into the UFC octagon, and could you describe what the feeling is like when the cage closes?
No. It's incredible. No, when you be in an arena, you're going to fight into the guy like 30,000 people. Scream. That's insane. That is a priceless sensation, and I'm so glad to God give me the opportunity to have that sensation here.
Derek36 would like to find out, what happened back in Pride when you were supposed to have a possible fight with Bas Rutten? Obviously, a lot of the fans were really looking forward to that fight, but can you tell us what happened where it didn't come to fruition?
No, that fight, the guys never offered for me. No, I think, that will not happen.
Okay, interesting. Now, Wanderlei, we're going to do what we call a submission radio tap out round. We just ask you a bunch of sort of fun questions and you answer them more or less as quick as possible. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, if you could have one rematch, what would it be?
Vitor.
How's your relationship with Rampage Jackson, and do you follow his career now that he's in Bellator? What do you think of his career now?
Doing good. He's doing good. He's fighting good, and I hope he back to the UFC.
What was your favorite thing about Australia on your trip here?
The people.
What do you think needs to be done to make MMA popular in Japan again?
I hope so. I hope back. I'm ready to help.
Wanderlei, what was your favorite moment in your career?
When I beat Jackson, second time.
Wanderlei, how is your body feeling? Do you have any injuries at the moment, or are you 100% ready to fight?
100%.
And Wanderlei, when are you coming down to Australia to teach a seminar or anything else to teach the fans how to fight?
I just maybe in November I will go back, and who wants to have a seminar with me, send one email for me on cao@buzzfc.com. And I'm so glad I make a couple of seminars in Australia. We have a lot of good guys. I pass my techniques. I show my histories. I have a lot of fun in Australia. I hope I'm back in November.
Well, there you have it, guys. Wanderlei Silva, one of the greatest fighters in MMA history, and definitely one of the biggest moments here on Submission Radio, being able to interview such a fantastic icon in the sport. Wanderlei, we look forward to having you down here in November, and we really appreciate an opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you so much. I want to say thanks for all my Australia fans again, for the support on my fights, for the support on the street. You guys are awesome, and I have a great moment. And I'm going to your city. Come to visit me, shake my hand, take the picture, and I want to say thanks for all of my guys personally. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Wanderlei. Have a great day.
There you go, Wanderlei Silva. Who would have thought Wanderlei Silva on Submission Radio? What an honor to have him on, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of stuff to talk about in regards to Wanderlei Silva. Obviously, a lot of news, people wanting to find out how long he'll be banned, if he'll be banned at all. So we'll be staying on top of that story for sure, and hopefully, we'll be able to speak to Wanderlei when he comes down to Australia. But Cass, speaking of huge fighters and big cards, UFC on Fox 12, man, that was a pretty exciting and thrilling card for all of the fans.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Good fights, good night of fights. The Fox cards, they pretty much always deliver. I mean, look, I guess it's time to break down the card. Starting off with obviously the prelims. We'll chat about those really quick, and then we'll talk about the main card. Kicking off the Fox prelims is obviously Brian Ortega versus Michael De La Torre. Really, really quick fight right there. Brian Ortega locked in a rear naked choke. First round, minute 39. Easy payday for Brian Ortega. It was in the featherweight division. In welterweight division, Tim Means and Hernani Pepetto, they had a really nice back and forth fight. The judges scored it. Tim Means, unanimous decision, 29-28 to Tim Means. Then in the light heavyweight division, see, here's where things got interesting. Former guest of Submission Radio, Pat Cummins, obviously defeated Carl Kingsbury by decision, 30-27. Now, Dennis, what did you think of this fight?
Well, our boy Pat Cummins, such a dominating performance that one of the judges scored it 30-24, which is, I don't know if people will see that one very often, but yeah, just a very dominating performance. Pat, having two very dominant performances back to back. Very excited to see where he goes after this. And obviously, Carl Kingsbury deciding to retire after this fight. I suppose it was a case of Carl realizing that but perhaps he doesn't feel like he's up to the standard anymore. He's obviously lost quite a few fights back to back, but he's always been a personality, starting from his appearance on The Ultimate Fighter, where well, there's no classy way to say it, jerked off over someone's sushi, I believe. So, he's always been a character, and it's good to see certain fighters, go before they get hurt or really injured in the ring. But I was really impressed with Patrick. What did you think, Cass?
Yeah, I was going to say, just quickly on Carl Kingsbury, hats off to him. He was always a really fun fighter. He did have a nice little win streak. That was up until 2011. But to be honest, the guys that he was beating, they weren't really big names. And then once he started fighting guys like Stephan Bonner, Glover Teixeira, Jimmy Manuwa, and Pat Cummins, which, if you look at it, those are some really, really dangerous guys. And obviously, that's four in a row. And he said before this fight that, if he can't stay up to this level of fighting in MMA and in the UFC, he's going to retire. And Pat Cummins basically said on our show when he was on here that he was going to try and retire Carl Kingsbury. And call him Nostradamus, because that's pretty much exactly what happened. And yeah, Pat Cummins, he's really coming into his own. He had that, tough entrance into the UFC against DC Daniel Cormier, took it on like 10 days notice, and he's really rebounded. He's won 2 in a row. And wow, the wrestling of Pat Cummins, it's really something. Really, really, really dominant performance. There was some rounds, there was absolutely zero offense from Carl Kingsbury. So I don't know if I'd score it 30-24. I think 30-25 is a little bit more accurate. But yeah, really, really, really impressed by Pat Cummins. But on the positive side, I was also really impressed by Carl Kingsbury's beard.
Yeah, that's right. And, just very interested to see what happens with Pat next, who they're going to match him up with. I think it's one of those cases where I don't mind if they take their time with Pat and let him develop while he takes up competition that's getting better and better. I wouldn't want to see him being thrown in there with the Wolves just yet. I think just give him a few more, difficult competitors, but nothing in the top 10 or sort of top 15 straight away. I think he still needs a little bit of time to get used to the octagon and just build up his skills. But very impressed with Pat, and I think we'll have to get him on the show and have a chat about this win because love to hear his thoughts on what he's expecting to do next.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of fun fights there for Pat Cummins. Maybe someone like a Ryan Jimmo or a Jimmy Manuwa. I'll be very interested to see who the UFC match him up with. But looking at the next fight on the card, we obviously had Jorge Masvidal against Darren Cruikshank. This is a really interesting fight. The first round, I would definitely score for Darren Cruikshank. Pretty good performance by him, but the next 2 rounds were all Jorge Masvidal. I think the second round was a 10-8 to Jorge Masvidal. And in the third round, it was pretty much dead even. So they both came in very tentative, but finished off the fight nicely. What did you think of this one, Dennis?
Yeah, I agree with you. Darren got had a great first round, and as you mentioned, the other two, Masvidal did a great job. And just again with the judges' decisions, one of the judges scored a 29-27. I just thought that was a little bit strange. I agree with the 29-28, but like you mentioned, he had one 10-8 round the third round was pretty close, and in the first round, he got a knocked down on Masvidal. So I'm not sure what these judges were sort of thinking in some of these decisions.
But as far as Masvidal's future, he did lose against Rustam Khabilov not too long ago. But prior to that, he beat Justin Wilcox, Tim Means, Michael Chiesa, and after getting beaten by Khabilov, he's now beaten Pat Healy and Darren Cruikshank. So people forget Jorge Masvidal is a top lightweight, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes in the UFC from there.
Absolutely. Now, after the prelim card, obviously the main event kicked off, and what a first fight. Bobby Green versus Josh Thompson. Now, Josh's original opponent dropped out. Bobby Green stepped in as late notice, and, Bobby had a bit of a tough time recently, didn't he, Cass?
Yeah, he definitely did. I feel for Bobby Green. His brother, Mitchell Davis Jr., was murdered in May, unfortunately, and Green suspects that it was a gang-related shooting. Bobby Green himself did receive death threats. Not only that, but he was rehabbing a broken ankle, and he did have the birth of his daughter. And so the last couple of months have been really hard for Bobby Green. And then Michael Johnson obviously is out of the Josh Thompson fight, so he gets the call. So pretty miraculous that he did manage to win this fight. Not that Bobby Green isn't a good fighter, but it's a lot of things to take on for any person, regardless of whether you're a fighter or just a normal person.
Yeah, so good on Bobby Green for doing that. Now, in terms of the fight, Bobby did a lot of talking in this fight, and a lot of people gave him a bit of criticism for it, but it actually worked in his favor because I think it actually caused Josh Thompson to sort of evade his game plan and let Bobby Green get away with a lot of stuff. Josh didn't mind letting Bobby take the center of the octagon, getting him up against the fence, and I believe Bobby Green's octagon control ultimately sort of pushed him across the line and got him the victory. It was a very, very close fight. And, Josh Thompson had such a long layoff. I think ring rust could also be attributed to it. And I just think that, Bobby came in there and he really wanted that W. And, he came in and he looked pretty good. I mean, there were some times there where I wished Bobby would engage more. He just sort of stood there and did a lot of talking, didn't throw as many punches or didn't do very much, but there were some great moments there. Mind you, I think Josh Thompson had some great moments too. He got a couple of good takedowns. He landed some good shots, but I just think that Josh didn't really have the fire lit under his ass in this one, and I think he sort of let it slip through his fingers a little bit and let Bobby dictate the fight a little bit too much. What did you think, Cass?
Yeah, I actually really agree with basically everything that you said. Starting with Josh Thompson maybe not having that fire under him, I would agree. I think he was training for so long for Michael Johnson to have that opponent ripped out from underneath him and have Bobby Green inserted there. I think that really took the wind out of him. Obviously, you and me, we've never trained for a fight, but I can only imagine how frustrating it is when you're studying a guy, and especially with Josh Thompson, he was contemplating retirement not too long ago, and then he found the fire. He decided he was going to, got the call for Michael Johnson, so he'd be, analyzing Michael Johnson, watching tape, preparing for him, and I think he would have felt pretty good about it, and then, to get Bobby Green last second, I think that would have derailed him a little bit, and when he came in, he looked pretty stiff. He didn't loosen up until the first 2 minutes, which is understandable, given how much time he did have off. All in all, look, it was a very lackluster fight. I'm not a fan of Bobby Green talking a lot. I don't mind Bobby Green. He's a good fighter, but I really don't like when fighters, talk during their fight, unless you're Nick or Nate Diaz, because no one really does it like they do. But honestly, if ever there was a sport where you really needed, talk through your actions, it's MMA. And in this case, Bobby Green, he did a lot of talking and he didn't do too much in that fight. I would have liked to see him a lot busier, and I'm just not a fan of fighters that sort of remain complacent. Not that I'm knocking Lyoto Machida, but you've seen it in some fights where Lyoto Machida, he's been very content to sort of counter-strike, and he's lost those decisions. So Bobby Green, moving forward, he really needs to be careful with things like that. At the same time, he did knock off a veteran in Josh Thompson, and he did take the fight on short notice. So at the end of the day, I have to take my hats off to Bobby Green. Still impressive win for Bobby. Big step up in competition. And the big question now is, this is Josh Thompson's first back-to-back losses. So I wonder if Josh will contemplate retirement or want to get another fight ASAP to correct this fight and remove it from everybody's memory. Because honestly, a lot of the guys that sort of, we've been watching for a while now, they're all going. BJ, Carl Kingsbury, we saw Clay Guida in this card, really struggling with the young guys. And this is really, a young man's sport.
Yeah, I agree with you. But, I was sort of always looking at, not always, but I was sort of looking at it from a perspective that UFC might have won a little bit with this one. I mean, I think a lot of people had Josh Thompson winning this. It was such a close split decision. I know Dana White thought Josh Thompson won it, and not that many people see it as a big loss for Josh, but I think it helped Bobby Green, kind of step out in the limelight and become a possible star for the UFC, being on a Fox card, getting such a big win. So I think UFC might be able to set up a nice big fight for Bobby. Use Bobby on one of their fight night cards to draw a crowd, which is good. And I think I agree with you. I'll be interested to see what Josh wants to do after this one. I know he was very disappointed with the decision, but these things just happen. And sometimes when you get a guy trash talking you, it gets you off your game plan. So interested to see what he's going to do from here. But Cass, the next fight on the main event card was Dennis Bermudez versus Clay Guida. We had Dennis on the show last week, and he gave us a bit of a prediction, didn't he? That he was going to knock Clay out, not knock him out, but take Clay out, and he did just that.
Well, I believe the words he used were that he was planning to crush Clay Guida. And of course, it was a big step up in competition for Dennis Bermudez, who has really looked unstoppable for a while now. He was coming into the fight with 6 wins in a row, and he basically said that if he beats Clay Guida, whether he knocks him out or submits him, he's going to sing for that title shot. Now, he didn't exactly sing, and he didn't really ask for that title shot. I mean, he basically said he'd like a title shot, but otherwise he'd take a top 5 opponent. So he kind of asked for a title shot nicely. What did you think of, before we talk about the fight, what did you think of the post-fight speech from Dennis Bermudez?
Well, I certainly expected a little bit more from him. I mean, we were on the show and he promised us, a call out if he wins, so I expected it. But a lot of these fighters who fight on the Fox card, I almost feel like they're a little bit more nervous fighting on these Fox cards. I don't know what happens in the back, or I don't know whether it's because everything's so rushed and they have such limited time, but I always get a feeling from these fighters that there's a bit more pressure from them when they're on these big Fox cards. And when Dennis was talking, I got a little bit of a feeling from him that, he wasn't as comfortable as he usually is in front of the mic. But yeah, I expected a little bit more.
You might be right. I mean, obviously, with a pay-per-view audience, it's people who are, paying specifically for the UFC. It's only MMA fans. In this case, you've got, possibly the whole nation watching. But, he did say if he squeaked by, he wasn't going to sing much on the microphone. If he crushes him, he's going to call out, for that title shot. But, look, I'm really excited to see what happens next with Dennis Bermudez. Obviously, he's going to have to get, a really top elite featherweight opponent. And I'd say if he beats him, he's pretty much going to have to get that title shot. Just looking at the fight, I mean, wow, look at Clay Guida's face when he was starting the fight. It was very, very, very different to Clay Guida's face at the end of the fight. I noticed Dennis is very focused, very, very patient, very fluid, striking by Bermudez. Clay Guida, I mean, you got to love him. He was putting on a show from start to finish. Dennis ate that really big shot from Clay Guida in round 2, and he just ate it like a biscuit. Didn't do anything. I mean, then again, Clay Guida is not exactly known for his power in his punches, more his brawling and his volume. Guida was generally in the fight from start to finish, but you could see as soon as Dennis Bermudez got him in, almost in that rear naked choke, it was all but over. Guida was basically ready to tap. And, fun fact, 7 wins in a row now for Dennis Bermudez. Hats off to him big time. Equal with Matt Brown, 1 below Chris Weidman, and 4 below John Jones. What did you think, Dennis?
Well, I think it's interesting because I was talking to you about the Road to the Octagon series. We didn't get a chance to watch Dennis train in person this time around, but he looked fantastic in his training. And Clay Guida, he's Clay Guida. He's always in great shape. He didn't look that great in the countdown, but it's just a countdown. It's just a warm-up show. When Clay went out and he felt Dennis's striking, he wanted to take the fight to the ground. Then when he tried to take the fight to the ground, he realized, wait a minute, this guy's really difficult to take down. So then he just sort of felt, I felt as I was watching that he was a little bit stuck. And I think Dennis got into his head right away. I mean, he landed some really strong punches. I mean, Dennis Bermudez, he's had some great wins, 6 wins in a row, but I don't think he's ever had a win over someone like Clay Guida, like a fan favorite, a big name in the UFC, and I think he opened a lot of people's eyes. If people didn't know who Dennis Bermudez was before his fight, they definitely know who he is now, and if they didn't put him into title contention before, he'll definitely be in there now. I mean, the guy just looked spectacular, and putting away a guy like Clay Guida, who was coming off 2 wins and is such a tough guy who holds wins over guys like Anthony Pettis. I mean, I think Bermudez, is in a great position right now. I'm really interested to see what happens. And the gentleman's cut, I expect it to be starred properly when walking out to the ring, but maybe there's some kind of limitations with having wax in your hair when you fight. So I was a little bit disappointed that the hair wasn't nicely done when he came out to fight.
Yeah, it's the Mr. Miyagi rule, wax on, wax off. Just quickly, going into that fight, Clay Guida was only going in on a one-fight win streak, if you can call that a win streak, against obviously Tatsuya Kawajiri. Previous fight, he got knocked out in the first time in his career by Chad Mendes, but I think it really is a case of the old guard falling. And, as far as Dennis Bermudez goes, unless you're in a really weak division, you need that signature win to get you a title shot and to really get you in title contention. And I think this was, you can't just put together a streak, without any exciting wins and really getting your name out there. You need people talking about you. And this is Dennis Bermudez's coming out party. It was a big win for him, like you said, Dennis, over a guy like Clay Guida, who has had a lot of classic fights, interesting style changes over the years. And I'm very curious to see where Clay Guida goes from here, because he wasn't a title contender in the lightweight division, not until, back in the day when he held the Strikeforce Championship, and now it doesn't seem like he's going to be title contender in the featherweight division. So that'll be really interesting to see where he goes from here and how many fights he has left in him. But, kudos to Dennis Bermudez. Massive win for Dennis Bermudez tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's right. Not two-fight win streak. He did have a good win against Hatsu Hayoki before, unfortunately, Chad Mendes knocked him out. But yeah, definitely interested to see where Clay Guida goes. And I think, Clay is such a fan favorite. He's such a big name that, and I think in his mind, I think Clay knows that the title might be out of reach. But I think he's still keen on having some great wars. And I think the UFC can use him wisely to draw some big crowds. So I'm sure there's a couple of interesting fights left in Clay, and he's such a gamer. I'm sure he'll stick around for at least a couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. Next up was the light heavyweight division, Anthony Johnson versus Antonio Rogério Nogueira. Yeah, what a fight. What did you think of this one, Dennis?
It's the scene from The Simpsons where Homer's a Krusty the Clown and the Hamburglar is there, and the kid's asking Homer to please stop because he's already dead. It was... Listen, Anthony Johnson, it's really interesting. I'm interested to see what you think about it. But a lot of people have said that he's just spectacular at light heavyweight and even better than when he was in welterweight. And I think, and a lot of people have suggested that him doing those huge weight cuts actually took away from his performance. And he looked absolutely spectacular. He came out like Mike Tyson. It was just brutal to watch. You and me were here in Australia, UFC 110, to see Big Nog versus Cain Velasquez, and it was a similar feeling when I watched this one. It was just a total domination. Anthony Johnson said in his post-fight speech that he wanted to go out there because he knew that little Nog, is a tough guy, he's a durable guy, and you don't want, to let the fight go out into the later round. So he wanted to really prove a point and really hurt him at the start. And he did just that. That slow motion uppercut and then the follow-up, and he was coming down, was a PS3 Fight Night-esque knockout where you look at the replay over and over and you go, yeah, I got that extra shot in before the guy went down. It was just spectacular. What did you think, Cass?
When Iggy Azalea goes, who dat? Well, that's kind of what I think when I look at Little Nog in this fight. I mean, he's had such a long comeback, or he's been on the shelf for so long. His last two wins were over Tito Ortiz and Rashad Evans. Now, he hasn't fought since February in 2013. And I mean, the hardcore MMA fans, like they, Little Nog is already a legend in the sport from all the years, of him fighting in Japan and obviously, in Affliction. And he's been around for a long time. But in the UFC, he hasn't had that much success. He's lost to some wrestlers. He's had a few, interesting decisions. And he was talking about, having a title shot after this fight. And I mean, this fight was over before it even started. I mean, this was such a destruction. And Little Nog, he's not a young guy. Much like Big Nog, he's got a lot of mileage. He's had a lot of wars. He hasn't lost by, knockout a lot, only once, and that was against Remy Sokoudjou. That was back in Pride 33 in 2007. I'd say this was just as devastating, if not. This was, like you said, absolute destruction. EA Sports Fight Night Knockout replay, very much like that. I'm very interested to see what happens with Anthony Rumble Johnson. Obviously, he had an interesting career in welterweight. Everyone knows about the cuts, etc., etc. I'm not saying I'm not sold on Anthony Johnson because the only way to describe him is a monster. He's absolutely ferocious. and absolutely destructive in the light heavyweight division. And beating a guy like Phil Davis, that's no joke. And Little Nog is a nice accomplishment on his resume. But I'm really curious how he's gonna go against maybe one of those top 3 guys, even a guy like a Glover Teixeira or even Ryan Bader. And then, of course, ultimately John Jones. I think that's really the big question, or even a guy like DC. So I'm very interested to see that. And obviously, just a few things that sort of stuck out also was obviously Rashad Evans, who trains with Anthony Rumble Johnson at the Black Zillions. Didn't really do much against Little Nog. It was a very bizarre fight where they played patty cake the whole time. And in this case, Rumble Johnson demolished him. So what does that say about Rashad? And what would that say about if those guys fought? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. That Rashad fight was like an awkward blind date where nobody knew what the hell was going on. I mean, I think that's one of those fights where the UFC sort of hides it in the closet with all the illegal German porn. It's yeah, it was an interesting one, and I think it's a great point as well. So yeah, some great points there. And you mentioned some names there like Ryan Bader, Glover Teixeira. I would love to see Anthony matched up with one of those names next. It would be interesting. And I think, there's a bit of a bandwagon being built right now, and people are hopping on the Anthony Johnson bandwagon. I think Anthony's a great guy, but there's still some proving left to do before I believe he's got what it takes to match up with a John Jones, like you said. And I don't think Anthony's in too much of a rush. He's mentioned before that he's happy to be brought along slowly. And I think the UFC like that because, that's more devastating knockouts and more hype for Anthony if he does get a title shot. But definitely some great matchups there. And with the light heavyweight division the way it is now, we never know. People are always getting injured. We might actually see Anthony in a title shot in some kind of weird, bizarro world where DC gets injured and Anthony Johnson's having coffee around the corner or something. So, and they're like, yeah, you. So who knows what's going to happen. But it's definitely great to have him back in the UFC. I'm very happy to have him back in the UFC.
Couldn't agree with you more. I was going to say also from the UFC standpoint, they're really happy because the light heavyweight division, it's not that it's a thin division, but as far as contenders for, John Jones, he doesn't have that many. After Gustafsson, maybe Anthony Johnson, and then really who else? Obviously, the Phil Davis hype train got derailed. So I think the UFC are really happy that there's a guy that they'll be able to sell. And if they, show off that highlight reel knockout, hopefully they'll get some pay-per-view buys. But in terms of the main event, wow, what a war. Absolute war. Definitely delivered. And it's funny because they always jinx these things. At the start of the fight between Robbie Lawler and Matt Brown, Joe Rogan was saying how, it's almost like false advertising. This is a 5-round fight because there's no way it's going to last 5 rounds. And of course, sure enough, it did. And it was basically a war from start to finish. But I liked it. It was kind of like a patient war. There was lots of bursts of action. It wasn't, 2 guys going at it first, second round, and the third, fourth, fifth, they were, completely out of gas. I really like this fight. Dennis, what did you think?
Well, Robbie coming out to Eminem's beautiful.
Yeah.
Interesting choice.
The Eminem curse. He spits in the face of it.
He spits in the face of the Eminem curse. Of course, if Robbie wanted to be a serial killer, he could make that face that he made when he was coming out to the ring to beautiful. No, it was an interesting song choice. Matt Brown likes to run down to the ring and, play all that fun song as well. He had that the sort of the generic sounding UFC song that they play in the build up for the warm up for the fans. So that was good. Yeah, I thought this was a great fight. I didn't think it was going to get to the 5th round after watching the first round. I mean, it just went. Yeah, there was just so many great shots. I mean, Matt Brown shows a lot of heart, and he's had a great win streak, but it wasn't exactly over big name guys. And I think he was in a similar position to Bermudez, where he fought a lot of guys, but people were saying, well, who are these guys? They're not the top guys. And his win over Eric Silva really opened up people's eyes into, believing the Matt Brown hype. And in this fight, Matt had a bit of an issue. Obviously, he missed weight. The weird commission didn't let him, lose that weight, so he didn't end up getting fined for it. So that's just something weird that happened at the weigh-ins. But he looked a little bit gassed to me throughout the fight. Matt makes up for his lack of skill in the hard department. Robbie definitely had crisper boxing. He moved around a lot better, and Matt took a lot of shots in the first round, and I think that's what took a lot of gas out of him, and a lot of jet fuel from the jetpack. In the later rounds, Matt showed his heart. He landed some great shots. He attempted to do a whole lot of stuff. but it was just a couple of steps behind Robbie. Although there were a couple of moments there where I thought Matt had a good chance of possibly winning. He just has one issue, which is letting people land leg kicks, across his stomach. I mean, that's just one thing. The other thing that I didn't like about Matt's performance was he ducked into a lot of punches. When he moved away from punches, he'd duck his head down. It looked a little bit strange at times, but and I believe he might have hurt his hand. We're not sure. I believe he went down to the hospital. But it was a great fight, and I think it's what the UFC wants when they have a fight on Fox. It just really proved that the UFC can deliver exciting fights. And I was listening to an interview after this one where Dana White said that he believes that Matt Brown's stock actually rised with that fight because he performed so well. Even though he lost, a lot of people still see him as a star. I'd agree with that. Robbie had a very, very close fight with the champ Johnny Hendricks, and this was a very close fight as well. So I think Matt definitely proved that he belongs in the ring with some of the big boys. What did you think, Cass?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's definitely room to grow for Matt Brown. And you mentioned Matt Brown being a star. I would partially agree with that. I think Matt Brown has a very, blue-collar look. So he's not going to be, in too many magazines, but he's definitely going to be a star of the people. I was actually thinking the same thing about Robbie Lawler when he was entering. First thing I thought was, man, is this guy impervious to pressure or what? I mean, coming out, laughing, smiling. There's very few fighters that you see so calm, so relaxed. People want to compare Matt Brown's tie clinch to Anderson Silva. I would say Robbie Lawler's calmness and the way he's so relaxed is very similar to Anderson Silva. You just don't see too many guys that relaxed. I mean, I don't know what's going on in the head of Robbie Lawler when he comes out, but I think the fact that Robbie Lawler, he's not too open. He's, much like Brock Lesnar, where everyone was always chasing him for interviews and things like that, and he just, he was always a bit of a mystery. Same thing with Robbie Lawler, and in a lot of ways, that can make people a star. And I think Robbie Lawler is really, really on his way to being a big star in the UFC. Maybe not to that level of, like a John Jones or a Cain Velasquez, but, I'd say pretty close. He's going to be a big star in the welterweight division, and, he's obviously going to have that fight against Johnny Hendricks. Just a few notes here. Fantastic movement by Lawler. Coming into the fight, everybody was susceptible about Matt's, body, not really strength, but, body defense, and obviously he's been dropped by body shots in the past, never knocked out though. What's funny though is Matt Brown was the one who was throwing a lot of body shots, a lot of body kicks, a lot of body punches, and he was landing on Robbie Lawler. I think this fight was great, but it was a lot closer than people thought. I think Robbie Lawler, he looked very pretty and he was very effective, but Matt Brown, if you look at the strikes and the significant strikes, he didn't do bad at all. And in the last round, even though Matt Brown had never had any, championship round experience, he'd never done 4 rounds, never done 5 rounds. He really turned it up, and he really brought it in the 5th round. And you have to give a lot of respect to him for that. Not only that, but you could see he really hurt his hand. I'm no doctor. I would guess it's a broken hand, just the way he sort of, shook his hand out, and he still kept punching with his hand, with that same hand. So, crazy effort by Matt Brown. He was definitely in the fight the whole time. He scored some beautiful trips. He really loves being in that clinch. Nice work by Brown. He got some good takedowns. And there was times in, I think, the second round where Robbie looked really tentative. He really came back into form with some great feints in the 3rd round. Lawler did. And there was a lot of patience as well. There was a few times where Robbie hurt Matt Brown, and he didn't rush in there like a fool. He stayed patient. In the end, I would definitely agree with the judges' scorecards. I definitely think Lawler won that round, but not too much. What did you think, Dennis?
I thought I was really impressed with Robbie's cardio. I mean, he looked so fresh throughout the fight. I was really, really impressed, and I guess that's a product of fighting so frequently over the last few months. I think with Matt Brown, if he wants to, stay in the upper echelon of the division, he just has to work on not getting significant damage done to him at the start of the fight. I know he gets damaged quite frequently. He takes a lot of hard punches. That's his thing. He's got a lot of heart, but there's just not much longevity for a guy like that. Eventually he'll start getting damaged more and more, as we've seen with a lot of these fighters, and it just takes a lot out of him. I'd like to see Matt try and use his footwork to avoid a lot more punches. And that way, I think that would gain a lot. Also, who knows how much his back is still bothering him? Obviously, Matt's saying that this is one of the first camps he's had where his back wasn't bothering him. But the nature of his injury, that's an injury that can always affect a fighter, for the rest of his career. But like you said, just a fantastic fight, a lot closer than people thought. And, it was worthy of everybody's time. Definitely anyone who tuned in, would have just been very, very pleased with it. And I think, Dana White was in a very good mood after this card.
Yeah, it was funny. Watching it on Fight Pass, you see the picture of Dana White smiling when they said the post-fight press conference is coming. And I was laughing my ass off because when people think of Dana White, they don't generally think of, the jolly guy that's always smiling. But, I don't blame him. Fight of the night, obviously went to Robbie Lawler and Matt Brown. Obviously, I think people could have picked that, before the event had even started. Performance of the night, Anthony Johnson and Dennis Bermudez. Really could not think of, 4 people more deserving of those bonuses. So, and of course, Matt Brown is eligible for the bonuses. Normally he wouldn't be, but in this case he is, and he still was eligible for that title shot coming in there. So, happy for those guys, happy that they got paid, happy for the fans and obviously everybody else and us that we all got to enjoy the fights. Great night of fights, and I'm really curious to see what the ratings are for this card, because the last one, Verdum and Brown, really struggling in the ratings department. This one more reminiscent of like a Forrest Griffin, Stephen Bonner kind of fight that people love. So I'm really curious to see what ratings come out from this card.
Absolutely. And, this card could have been put on pay-per-view and it could have done very, very well. So good stuff to the UFC for putting it together. Now, Cass, speaking of people with a lot of heart, Diego Sanchez, we've spoken a lot about this man. He's a part of this episode. We had a chance to interview him. He's coming down to Australia on his Australian tour with Everything MMA. And we're just letting all the Aussies out there know he's going to be in Perth and Melbourne doing seminars. He's going to be doing a fancy dinner. Who knows? Maybe we'll be there. Bring up some good dinner conversation.
Don't recommend the tartar, whatever you do to Diego Sanchez.
That's right. You guys can ask him about the yes chant and everything like that. And you can get more information about that at www.everythingmma.com.au. Check it out. Tickets are going quickly, and, Diego's got a wealth of knowledge. So I'm very excited for his seminar down here.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a blast. Check out the description, guys. The link is going to be down there below. And, by all means, have fun. It's a rare opportunity that someone like Diego Sanchez does come down to Australia, and definitely get on that. Just also something quickly that I wanted to mention, in the post-fight conference, Dana White did reveal that Jose Aldo and Chad Mendes has been set for UFC 179, and that's going to be in Brazil, much to someone's basically pissed in Chad Mendes' coffee, that's for sure. When he was on the show, he mentioned that he didn't want the fight in Brazil. Last card they did in Brazil, not Mendes, but the UFC, there was some really, really dicey decisions, really, really dicey ref work. So I don't think... obviously Mendes didn't want to be in Brazil. Obviously, last time they fought, there was obviously the infamous cage grab. So that's something interesting that we're going to watch as that story unfolds. And I really want to get Mendes' reaction on that one.
Yeah, and I think he also, spoke about how hard it is for him, to keep his weight down, how long the travel is, how he, doesn't know the food there, it's difficult for him to get the proper nutrition there. So I'll be interested to see what the UFC does to sort of fix all those issues for him. I'm sure they're going to give him the hardcore VIP treatment to get him up there, but yeah, if I'm Chad Mendes right now, I'm boiling in my boots. I wouldn't be happy about it, but it'll be interesting to see what happens on the night, because if there is a repeat of something sus going on, those MMA journalists will be all over it.
Yeah, of course. And obviously, UFC 176 was originally going to be in California, and Mendes training with Team Alpha Male. He's fighting in his home backyard. First fight was in Brazil, so now they'd be going 1-for-1 for hometown advantages. And he was saying when we had him on the show that he wouldn't mind doing a little dance afterwards. Which obviously that's going to go out the window. But could you imagine if Chad Mendes beat Jose Aldo in Brazil and then he ran out into the crowd? What would happen? Would they celebrate, or would they try and kill him?
They would, they would probably try and kill him. That would be like a follow-up fight for Chad Mendes. It would be like a repeat of UFC 1 where they win and then they got to fight another few times. He'll be fighting these people in the crowd. He'll have to have another 20,000 or so fights before he leaves the building. He'll be like Roddy Piper.
Yes, and Ric Flair.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. That's crazy. But look, guys, I think that's another show for this week. Hope you enjoyed it, guys. Thank you so much for listening. As always, check us out at submissionradio.com. Check out the big site, guys. It's up. It's sexy. There's a lot of stuff up there. We're going to be having articles now. Don't forget to chat to us on Twitter, Submission AUS. That's Submission Oz. Facebook as well, Submission Radio AUS. All the links at our website and the description below. If you enjoyed it, fantastic. Subscribe. And we've got a lot of big guests coming up next week as well, don't we, Dennis?
Yeah, that's right. We've got some big guests coming out. We've got a lot of names popping up. And as Casper mentioned, the new website, submissionradio.com, there's a get in touch section down there. You guys can fill it out. You can send us your questions. There's a lot of fun stuff going on there, some articles, some good times. So make sure you check out the website. It's pretty sexy. We don't want to sell it too much, but I think you guys will enjoy it. And we're always open to answering any questions that you have on Twitter. Just recently, we were asking fans for questions for Wanderlei Silva through Twitter. So if you're following us on Twitter, it's more than likely you'll be able to have your input on the show. So make sure you follow us at Submission AUS.
Yeah, and just quickly, we did go a little bit over time this show, but next week, as of next week, we'll be doing fan segments. So get all your questions in. What do you want to hear our opinions on? We're going to be chatting about those, and we'll be crediting you if that is your topic. But just before we go, quick thank you to all our guests today: Wanderlei Silva, Diego Sanchez, and of course Rich Franklin. Big thanks to those guys for coming on. All those interviews and all the clips are going to be on our YouTube channel, so check them out. And again, thanks so much for listening, guys. Till then, that's another week for us. Take care.